Well, this is a blessing. It's a big blessing. All right. This is a blessing. I think we have never had so many people coming to 4 Days for Life in Santa Maria. We here are a lot of people who have been in the government for a long time, and we believe, and we dream in a big amount of people talking for the unborn babies and being the soldiers who are going to fight for them. And looking at you and looking all the people who registered names to have a prayer vigil outside Plan Parenthood during this campaign, I just was counting them last night, and it was 130 people signed for vigil hours. So it's really amazing. It's the grace of God that comes in hard times. And Bishop Hilda, she said, believe the impossible, and you can do the incredible. This is a dream of making impossible, but we are doing right now that incredible. Okay, thank you for all of you who said yes to this invitation to pray, to fast, to peaceful presence outside Planned Parenthood, and to hope too. This is our mission with this 4 Days for Life campaign. To bring hope for the woman who goes inside the country and for the workers of the abortion business there and for the babies too. And to start this night, we want to start with a prayer and a reflection. And I'm calling Father Smith, please. Yes. Yeah, please. Let me see. What about if I talk this better? Now it's better or not? Yes? Okay. No, so not too close.
We'll practice.
It's better. It's better.
Is this better?
Yes.
Oh, this is better.
Yes.
We'll talk like this. I have to have my water. Okay, if you thought my homily was long, wait till you hear this. I'll trade you this. I want to thank you all for being here. This is what we call a ministry of presence. Sometimes we wonder what we can do about abortion, and sometimes the only thing you can do is to be present, like you decided to be here. And you're going to be offering prayers, which are the most powerful of spiritual intercession that we can do as human beings, or spiritual beings. And so we need to exercise our spiritual powers, calling upon the saints, calling upon, of course, the Blessed Mother, but also the Holy Spirit that is within us that prays, as it says, with groans for utterances. So our prayers sometimes are nothing more than a groan. You know, we you see what's going on in the world and you just have to sigh, what's going on, right? So I wanted to thank you for being present. Encourage others to be present with you, because there is what's called a corporal work of mercy that you're doing. God reward you. God reward you for your faithfulness in this corporate work of mercy. May you do many more things like this prayer. This prayer for this March night. As I was reflecting on my assignment to Hilda, which I was very happy to receive and do, because this is a noble work. This is a noble work that you do. And I wanted to prepare something, reflection. You all know that back in 1973, when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Roe v. Wade, back then, the science was not clear about the beginning of human life in the womb. They considered it just a collection of cells. They weren't even sure about how a cell operates back in the early 70s. But now here in 2021, almost 50 years later, we understand the human person much more clearly. At conception, a new person is created with its own DNA, its own template, its own design as a person. It has its own heartbeat, its own brainwaves. It has its own God-given sex that will guide its distinct development as a child, either a boy or a girl. A friend of mine in Rhode Island is the president of the American College of Pediatricians, and human development is her specialty. She said that the pathway of development for a boy versus a girl, or a girl versus a boy, is 600 ways different. A girl develops 600 ways differently than a boy develops. She develops quicker, she's more mature, quicker. That's why teenage boys do dumb stuff. Am I right? Yeah. So, there's an old saying that if you have two teenage boys together, how many brains do you have? Huh? One? If you have three teenage boys together, how many brains do you have? About a quarter. It just reduces. Okay, I can say that because I was one once. But here's an argument that demonstrates the capricious nature of that Supreme Court's earlier decision. And this is just a simple question I'll ask you. Is the newly born baby actually a person? Yes, of course. Is the unborn child a person 6 minutes before delivery? Is the unborn child a person 6 hours before delivery? Good. Is the unborn child a person 6 days before delivery? Yes. Is the unborn child a person 6 weeks before delivery? Now how about this? Is the unborn child a person 6 months before delivery? Yeah, we get that, right? How come they can't figure this out? What the difference is, the only difference we're talking about is time and location. Time and location is the only difference between that born child and the unborn at whatever stage of development they're in. Because here's the news. That child, after it's born, is going to continue to develop for a decade and a half through their teenage years that we talked about. That development keeps going. And here's the other thing that a brain surgeon from Stanford explained to us once in Sacramento, where I used to work. That the brain finally develops in a male at about 20 years old. The final part of the frontal lobe is completed at about age 20. Just a fact. And so what this was about the problems of alcohol and marijuana, especially in young people, especially up to age 20, because if it's engaged earlier,
it will actually stunt and have a bad effect on the development of the brain.
How many here have heard of Dr. Bernard Nathanson? Is that familiar to you? Okay. Dr. Bernard Nathanson was an obstetrician and a gynecologist and a self-described atheist. But he was a key figure in the founding of the pro-abortion group called NARL, the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws. And when New York State repealed their anti-abortion laws, Nathanson directed the largest abortion clinic in the world in New York called the Center for Reproductive and Sexual Health. Notice the euphemisms. That all sounds good. Center for Reproductive and Sexual Health. He always liked to spin it as a health issue. His strategy is still being used today. He oversaw 75,000 abortions and was nicknamed the Abortion King, having performed 5,000 abortions himself, including his own child that he conceived with his girlfriend. This doctor, the Abortion King, aborted his own child. But then ultrasound came along, fantastic technology, and he saw the ultrasound image of an abortion procedure, and he saw the unborn child trying to escape from the surgical tools of abortion, and that floored him. He reversed his opinion that the fetus was just a blob of flesh, because it was clear that this unborn child could feel pain, and that it was trying to save itself. Happily, science is catching up with what our faith has always affirmed. Dr. Nathanson stated in his personal memoirs that his turnaround against abortion was purely a scientific and logical change of mind. He co-wrote Aborting America in 1979, and he's produced a movie called Silent Scream, if you've seen that, in 1985. He also had a documentary called Eclipse of Reason. And at the time he converted to the pro-life position, he was not a religious person. He was a medical doctor and a scientist who had come to the logical conclusion that the unborn child is a person, and he saw firsthand evidence of that in the ultrasound. The Catechism states, quote, paragraph 2271. Now, before I quote it, I want to tell you, I've heard different Catholics assert that our pro-life stance is relatively new. Have you heard that? And that it wasn't always how the church saw this. I've heard this from Catholics in my office, and it's disturbing because they obviously never read the Catechism. Quoting 2271, since the first century, the church has affirmed the moral evil of every procured abortion. The Didache. Now the Didache is a manual of liturgical instruction written in 90, maybe 110 AD. It's about the earliest document the church possesses. The Didache, also the Epistle of St. Barnabas, who was a colleague of St. Paul, also first century writing, and Tertullian's Apologetium, I'm not pronouncing that right, but that was at the end of the 2nd century. All these agree. The teaching has not changed and remains unchangeable. Direct abortion is gravely contrary to the moral law. God, the Lord of life, has entrusted to men the noble mission of safeguarding life, and men must carry it out in a manner worthy of themselves. Life must be protected with the utmost care from the moment of conception. Abortion and infanticide are abominable crimes. That is why the Code of Canon Law, section 1398, proclaims automatic excommunication by virtue of the act itself.
To be formally involved in abortion brings with it automatic excommunication. A bishop doesn't have to proclaim. A person who procures abortion or assists in that procurement is excommunicated themselves from the church because it is a most abominable of crimes. So faithful Catholics must live out their convictions in public and private life. It says further on in section 2273, the inalienable rights of the person must be recognized and respected by civil society and the political authority. Now we're getting into what we're about, which is trying to see the repeal of Roe v. Wade and the establishment of life in our law. The Catechism says, when the state does not place its power at the service of the rights of each citizen, and in particular of the most vulnerable, the very foundation of a state based on law is undermined. It is often asserted by the godless that you cannot legislate morality. Have you heard that one? I've heard that one. Newsflash. Every law is a statement of someone's morality or the lack thereof. Law makes clear what is right and wrong for a society, what is good or bad. Law is in fact a statement of morality. It is a moral statement. But whether it accounts with natural law and the eternal laws of God is another story. Scandalously, many who call themselves Catholic support abortion, and they rationalize their sin by declaring that they cannot impose their religious beliefs, their morality on others. I find that pretty laughable, because the atheists have absolutely no problem imposing their immorality on us. And what our Catholic brothers and sisters who will not stand up for their faith do is betray the true and the good. It's like Pontius Pilate, who privately discerned that Christ was innocent. You remember in John's Gospel, he sought ways to release him. Do you remember that? But he washed his hands of Jesus and did what the crowd demanded for his political expediency. Crucify him. Abort him. Rulers, presidents, kings are particularly susceptible to the demands of politics. If we say Jesus is Lord, everything in our lives, public and private, comes under his lordship, or his lordship means nothing. Every Catholic in public office is duty-bound to advocate for their Catholic convictions, above party loyalty if need be, in any public debate regarding life, from conception to natural death. Those that say they hold to the Church's moral law personally and turn around and surrender to the culture of death betrays the faith and endangers their own soul. Their surrender to the grave evil for political expediency makes the innocent pay the price of their own blood so they may remain in high office, sacrificing the innocent for their own gain. St. Mother Teresa asked this rhetorical question: if killing an innocent unborn child is not wrong, what is? What is wrong? Well, there's nothing wrong, Mother. You can kill the innocent unborn, you can kill anybody. Pro-lifers, that's us. We stand and we speak for what is right, for what is true about the human person. We stand with the little ones in the womb, the children whom Jesus embraces, as we read in our gospel today. Those who cannot stand and speak for themselves. They depend on us. So again, I want to thank you for being here and for coming and for showing your support for life and taking it to Planned Parenthood, letting them see that there are people who will stand against their evil. They may not understand it, but the witness is there. I think it was also St. Mother Teresa who said, God does not call us to always be successful, but to be faithful. Success is in the hands of the Lord. The battle is the Lord's. We just must engage. As I mentioned at the beginning, a ministry of presence to be ready to stand. So may God reward you and may His grace continue to give you strength and courage in the cause of life. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Father, for this generation and deep reflection too. So you help me with that. No. So now we're going to see a video about 40 Days for Life.
When he was born at 28 weeks. He was 2 pounds 7. He dropped to 1 pound 13. And if you've ever held, a 2 pound baby in your arms, and his little head fit in the palm of my hand,